Hey guys, welcome to the channel. We're back with episode 9 of To Your Eternity, where we're currently on one of the slower character arcs, that's for sure. They've really used these last couple of episodes to develop the new characters and set things up for, hopefully something big. So let's see if things heat up this episode. As always, you can click the first link in the description below to watch the reaction video, but don't forget to stick around for the discussion after. Alright guys, welcome back to the discussion. This episode was honestly, it's pretty packed. We got quite a bit of character development and a little, exciting cliffhanger at the end too. But I think basically this episode really covered three main areas that I want to get into in this discussion, and those are the relationship development between Fushi and Gugu, Rean and Gugu, as well as the Maker making an appearance, and that parasite creature enemy that attacked Fushi, or I guess March in this case. First up, Fushi and Gugu. So it looks like these two basically became the troublemakers in town. I mean, they start off the episode having a little bit of fun amongst themselves, I guess, scaring off the villagers. I think in terms of what sort of development Fushi's getting so far from Gugu, it's been mostly the bonds of brotherhood and friendship. You can really see the expressions on Fushi's face starting to brighten up and really open up in terms of the different types of emotion that he can show, as well as the degree to which he shows emotion. He's got some kind of goofy faces now. While these two are hanging out, it looks like Gugu has basically figured out how Fushi works, at least so far as Fushi has been developed by and has become the people that have left deep emotional impressions on him. One thing that I thought was particularly interesting was when Fushi was describing what had happened when he was Joan and he ended up taking the form of Fushi, or the boy. He said that the boy became empty and then he became him. It sounded like he was alluding to some sort of soul or consciousness that has left the body. And maybe we could go as far as to say that that's the visual representation of when that parasite was sucking the impressions or the ability to transform into certain people away from Fushi. I think the conclusion that we're supposed to draw from this is that Fushi can't transform or recreate things that have a soul or a consciousness or are living, which is why this whole time he has only been able to transform into someone after they have passed. It's nice that when they're presenting this information about how Fushi functions, they aren't just telling us all the details. Some of the stuff is left for us to infer or extrapolate based on what we know so far. In talking about their pasts, Gugu also mentions something interesting. He says that a normal life is where a lot of people think of you, and he sees himself as a loner basically. He used to have a family, but it turns out he and his brother were just working for them, and then they left, and now it was he and his brother on their own, and then his brother left him, and now it's just him. Being that there has been such a breaking of familial bonds and close relationships in his life, I think this really rounds out and adds some color and depth to Gugu's philosophy and outlook on life and where he ultimately sees meaning. And I think these feelings are eventually going to be passed on to Fushi. But now let's get into how they developed Rean's character and her relationship with Gugu. In this episode, Rean is almost presented as the perfect foil to Gugu in a lot of ways. She lives in a very wealthy, well-off family. She has both of her parents and multiple servants to take care of her and look after her every need and every want and desire. Her mother hires her a teacher for anything she expresses interest in, whether it be painting, drawing, or knitting, I think they mentioned. But despite all this, she feels trapped and crowded and chained by her parents' expectations and the control that they basically have over any aspect of her life. She wants to be free to be herself. She doesn't want to explore the world and learn about it in a structured, methodical, mechanical way. But it's easy to see how anyone, and especially her parents, feel that they're doing the best for her by trying to get her the best teachers, because as you go through life and gain experience, you think back and say to yourself, wow, if only I had a teacher to show me how to do things so I didn't have to make all the mistakes on my own and slowly learn for myself, I could have been so much further ahead than I am today, right? But that's just not who Rean is. She's got this free spirit where she wants to be able to experience new things on her own. She wants to be able to make mistakes. She wants to be able to explore her curiosities. She doesn't want to be told what to do. She doesn't want someone to basically remove all of the excitement or all of the novelty or all of the fun from learning the things that she's interested in. And we might look at that as being, naive or stubborn or immature, which that definitely is at least partly the case. But at the same time, this is kind of the way that a lot of people are. When they're put in a strict, rigid, structured learning environment, it sort of takes the spark or the excitement out of the learning process, right? I also like that they brought back up the color green, because I remember in the first episode of this arc, she gave Gugu the ring and said, I don't even like to wear the color, it doesn't look good on me anyway, right? Even though she was dressed in green, and I thought, like, that's an odd thing to say, you're wearing all green, you're going to give him this ring with a green stone in it. But then here we learn that actually purple is her favorite color, and she only has to wear green because it's her family's color. So people just keep, or her family just keeps buying green clothes, right? Because it's their family color. But it was a nice little detail, and I'm glad that they put it in there, because it means that this show really does pay attention to and care about small little details like this, so we can expect more in the future. But some of those close-up shots on Rean's face in this episode, when you could see just how purple her eyes really were, it definitely emphasized that note in terms of delivering imagery that showed us this theme that she wants to be a free spirit, and yet she's covered in her parents' expectations and control with her green clothing. Now, the scene when we finally get to see Rean's injured arm, I mean, what could be more of a foil than that, right? That little tiny scratch that she has that she's so embarrassed about and so dramatic over, compared to Gugu, which the show won't even let us see what it looks like because it's apparently that horrific and that crazy they can't even come up with a way to draw it, I guess. All we get to see is black and like white eyes covered in hair. And by the way, I can't believe they're literally giving his hair covered face like emotion expressions, like blushing, turning bright red. Oh, I just want them to show the face. Hopefully by the time he dies we'll see the face, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just never get to see it. And we all know that when Fushi becomes Gugu that he's gonna keep that face mask, right? I can't believe that Gugu tempted fate again when he asked Fushi to become him if he dies. Did he not learn his lesson with that log? Anyway, Rean is just the antithesis of Gugu's situation, and yet she's not happy with it. It's almost the case of the cliche, the grass is always greener on the other side. If you're in Gugu's situation, you crave family and friendship and closeness and bonds and people to care for you. If you're in Rean's situation, you're stifled by it, you're caged by it, you feel trapped underneath all of these expectations. Because as much as it's comforting to receive a certain level of care, at the same time, constant care, nurturing, and being looked after brings with it expectations that make you feel guilty or bad if you don't meet. You know, if your parents have been so great to you and given you such a great life and you disappoint them in some way, it's a lot of pressure. You feel like you don't deserve what you've gotten or you haven't earned it. You've been given so much and you can't even fulfill some of their expectations. I think anyone would feel that way given a situation like that. But at the end of the day, this entertaining little foil that they've created between these two characters really serves to highlight the idea that there isn't one right way or one better way or one good way or one proper way for life to be. It depends on the person, and it really depends on the environment and the situation that they've grown up and developed in, which is exactly what this show is about with Fushi. And it's funny, they kind of dispense with the idea of identity or, one's ego in this episode. And I mean, it seems like everyone has some interesting little line that they say every episode, which reveals something about the philosophy of their character or the show. When Rean tries to come get Gugu, he says, "I threw away my mask, so I threw away my life being a human." To which Rean later responds, "I don't care if you're a monster or a human, you're still you either way, right?" Whether you consider yourself a monster, a human, a pet or a toy in Rean's case, whatever the case may be, right? You're still you. You're still just you. And the thing that is you goes much deeper than being, a pet or a monster or even a human. And this is further emphasized by the sneaky little line that the maker says to Fushi. He says, "Are you having fun playing human?" Which of course really just suggests that no matter how much Fushi learns, no matter how much he develops, no matter how much he gains the impressions of all these humans and their way of life and how they live and what their desires are, their feelings, their goals, their wants, their impetus, everything, no matter all of that, he will never be a human, because at the end of the day, what he is goes deeper than that, both on like a spiritual, but also he's definitely just not from their world. I, for one, am glad that the maker has been making sporadic appearances so far, because something interesting or exciting always follows when he does. And I wasn't disappointed this time either, because that strange parasite entity that attacked Fushi before is back. And the maker wants to have us believe that Fushi's in some pretty big trouble, because apparently he hasn't learned enough or developed enough or taken any lessons from their last encounter. Probably because Fushi was not developed enough to really learn as much as he could have or understand the situation fully. So Fushi hasn't leveled up, he hasn't really learned any new tricks. In the meantime, that parasite has come prepared, or at least it looks like it, and he's made the first move. So it looks like finally at the end of this episode, things are going to heat up. And honestly, I'm kind of worried about Gugu. I feel like this could be the perfect opportunity for the story to kill him. They could do it in a number of ways. Obviously, the typical straightforward one that comes to mind is, let's say Fushi's about to be beaten, he's in a terrible position. Gugu comes at the last minute, throws himself in the line of fire to protect Fushi, saves Fushi, but at the cost of, being gravely injured, because the maker seems to suggest that Fushi's in a lot of trouble and isn't really prepared for this situation. Maybe that's the way that they're gonna explain how he gets out of it, but who knows? Gugu could make it out of it. I don't know. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this type of content, please feel free to drop a like or even subscribe to the channel, as it helps me out a lot. If you guys have any questions or even discussion points, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I might even work it into some of the next video's discussions. Until then, guys, I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.